Welcome to Collectible Conversations, guys. I am Radar, formerly known as Pokemon Radar. I'm one of your hosts, and to my right, or maybe your left, however it's set up.
I am Squeaks, also known as Sean. Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing great. We are, regurgitating? Is that the word? Rebirthing the Collectible Conversation.
I don't know those words, but we're doing something.
We are
restarting, I believe, would be
restarting our beloved podcast, Collectible Conversations. This is a podcast we did before in the past. I actually looked it up. Our last upload, which they're no longer available except on Spotify and Apple, was March 3rd of 2021. That was episode 19. So yeah, here we are, restarting episode 1, season 1, season 2. I don't know. Yeah, we're uploading on big ambitions. We have a lot going for us right now. So
down bad.
Yeah, down bad. So we are we're uploading on a brand new channel, Collectible Conversation. Hopefully you guys can hit that subscribe button for us. Leave a like, leave a comment. Who do you like better? That's how we'll start this. We're gonna tear each other apart by our fans who like or dislike.
We need to know who is better. We already know Radar's more attractive. Get it out of it. Quit typing it. I already see it. We already knew that. We want to know who has the better personality.
I don't know, man. You're looking pretty good. You got some good lighting going on in there. I've been going downhill for a while, so we'll see. I don't know. Some people don't like beards. Some people do like beards. It could be a close match. So,
listen. You don't want me to try to grow a beard. I only got half Amish, so I'm half Amish, half beard, baby. It just doesn't work out.
All right. Well, maybe we talk a little bit about what this podcast is before we get too far off the deep end.
What are we doing here?
It's right in the name. We're having wonderful conversations about collectibles. Mainly we'll probably be talking a lot about Pokemon, given that we built our businesses off of Pokemon mainly, but we have a wide variety of interests and a wide variety of inventory and collectibles for ourselves that aren't Pokemon related. So we're going to talk about anything and everything collectible, talk about kind of some news, exciting things that are going on in the world, talk about ourselves, our lives, our personal business of what we kind of do on a weekly basis, what's going on, and maybe attract a few listeners. So did I miss anything? Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
No, I think that's about it. I
No?
mean, that pretty much covers the whole spectrum. I mean, like you said, I think we'll be primarily, a lot of what we'll talk about is going to be Pokemon focused because it's something that we're both passionate about. It's something that's important to both of us. However, and I think that this is one of the things that when we did do this previously made it great was how we could relate those Pokemon experiences to other collectibles or other collectibles to our Pokemon experiences and vice versa, and then relate that kind of to bigger picture things, whether it be life experiences or things that are happening in the world, and just having kind of that more broad look instead of, I think it's so easy when you're into a specific collectible, like for us, Pokemon, to tunnel vision on just everything happening in that sector and nothing else. And, that can lead to sometimes good things because you're really tuned into what's happening within your own collectible ecosystem, but it can also lead to bad things where sometimes you miss opportunities or risks and things like that, like recession or stuff like that, because you're not kind of looking at that bigger picture. And so I think that's kind of the focus that we both talked about wanting to have moving forward is to present that picture of the things we're passionate about and talk about those relevant topics, but kind of lead them to, bigger, broader topics and, things that, hopefully you guys, the viewers, would actually want to hear about and see, and maybe even some of the stuff that you guys would bring up to us that you want to hear our opinions on and things like that.
Yeah, and tons of experience and bad decisions that can help you guys not make the same ones.
Yes, because we have a big old list of that.
Oh, man.
We might have to start a whole new podcast for that.
Yeah.
Experiences and bad decisions, season 1, episode 1.
That might be a clickbaity podcast and could be very successful. So we might have to consider that. Or just take all the clips of every single bad thing that happened to us that we talked about and or that we made happen.
Experience just their clips from this every week. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
So
but
yeah,
I do want to reaffirm before we jump in.
yeah.
Blips and Bleps are staying, and you can sit tight, wait till the end of the episode. They'll be there just like always, where we will present you guys topics that you can then pick from to hear more about from us next week. So don't worry, not everything's
Cool. I'm excited. I have a few. I don't know if they're any good. I haven't really been as involved in this Pokemon world as I used to be, but I'm definitely looking forward to getting back into it. So
well, catch us up. I
yeah,
assume some of our viewers early on are going to be people that have followed our other channels and other content,
yeah,
and so catch us up on what you have been up to in the meantime. Since we stopped doing these, what, a year and 3 months ago.
yeah. Well, let's see, when did everything start crashing and burning? Yeah, I started. Let's see, right around that time was when I started getting more involved with Whatnot. Took on a nice consulting role with them. Did a full-time thing with them for a while. Um, actually, yeah, still consulting, so I get to do that every now and then. But I kind of went headfirst into that startup world, which, like you said, I kind of put all my focus into and let other things fall apart, which was both good and bad. I mean, you'll probably get a lot of mixed opinions from us during this whole thing of, hey, there's good sides and bad sides to everything that we do. So walked in through that, started traveling the world, going to Dubai, going to every big city in America, buying things, selling things, talking to people. And then ended up moving to New Jersey. Now on the last leg of that move, and looking to move somewhere else now, probably back to where I was born and raised in Michigan, but not entirely sure yet. Still have a couple months here to figure out exactly what I want to do. And recently revitalized the YouTube channel. Going to be posting regularly there. Been making a whole bunch of reels, as cringy as they might be, on Instagram and TikTok and wherever. And then yeah, just like diving all in again on rebuilding the brand, the business, getting things back up on eBay, doing my streams every now and then, just really doing as much as I can to build in the direction that I was headed before I kind of stopped. And yeah, like I just realized that this is exactly where I want to be and what I want to do. So I think this is finally the time where I'm going to do that and do it right. I'm sure I'll need some motivation and support from you and other people's through times of tribulation. But yeah, that's what I'm up to. I mean,
That's exciting though. That's an
yeah,
exciting time to feel like, okay, I did this thing once, and then I did this other thing and tried this thing, and I made a few stumbles and hit a few roadblocks, but now I'm back, I've got a clear headspace, and I'm ready to just like hit the ground running. You feel empowered of like, at this point, the world or the content world, the internet is your oyster. That
yeah,
like it just comes down to like how much you want to dedicate to it, what time do you want to put into it, what do you want to learn, what do you want to do, what's your focus, all those kind of. But that's like a just as much of a business and a content growth experience as it is like a personal growth experience, which is it's almost like liberating. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
but before we keep going, I've just got to say, everyone, check the description below. Go to Radar's Instagram. I believe that's where you posted it, because you were talking about that you rebooted, doing some content. You were going to make some of those goofy videos, whatever. You did a video of a package opening that I watched recently that was like ASMR almost. That
Oh yeah.
like, you know what I'm talking about? That was, dude, I'm not going to
I'm
lie. I've never been an ASMR person, but there's something about the crinkle of bubble wrap and like
yeah,
the dude,
dude.
that
I've
video, I
I've
was just
posted
like,
like
there's
10
a
of them.
thing there.
I'm posting those every day now.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
dude, there's a thing
Yeah.
there. Yeah. So everyone go check those out.
Thank
I
you.
think that's super cool. I enjoy that content a lot. I don't know why. I've never been really like into ASMR. I don't even wear headphones, obviously, but I was just like, man,
Yeah.
this is like therapeutic.
Yeah.
Open more, like, so anyway, so yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's cool. I think it's cool that you're trying new things. I never would have thought that was for me, but I watched your other stuff, so I watched that, and you have another fan.
Cool.
So I would watch
Thank
your
you.
stuff anyways. But so you never know. Maybe you'll find more people. They're like, man, I like listening to bubble mailers being opened in my left and right ear. So like I don't know.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I've got a hashtag ASMR. I haven't done that yet on any of them, so I haven't hit that audience, but I need to get there.
Lead into it, yeah. Slowly bleed into it.
But yeah, that's my life so far. I feel like I lived a whole lifetime in the past like year and a half. So a lot of experiences, a lot of good things, bad things, and a lot of growth. But excited to be here now. What about you? What are you up to? What have you been up to for the past year, 2 years?
So from March of last year, so I pretty much just stuck with Pokemon throughout, 2021. Right, we're in 2022. I just had to double check. Okay. I just wanted to make sure because how dumb would that be if I went on this whole thing and then yeah. But we are. Life has been a whirlwind, and so my days all bleed together. I have a very chaotic schedule because I'm the type of person that I sleep when I get tired, and so sometimes that means I work at 3 in the morning. Sometimes that means I work at 3 in the afternoon, and
So weird.
but 2021 was pretty normal for me. It was pretty much like 2020, except that things did begin slowing down. We started seeing some bigger warning signs, some bigger flashes. I think March of last year was kind of around the time that maybe we had the big Neo Genesis Lugia sale. I think it was like January or February.
Yeah.
And then that, transition happened where it started to tank and it went from like 120 some K to like 78K to like 50 some K or something like that. And so we were seeing the writing on the wall. And so I did start to lean more into doing, video games and things like that and moving through, reining back a little bit on like some of the sealed product I was picking up from distributors. We were at that point where, um, in 2020, you took everything. If they wanted to throw a million Lycanroc Corviknight V battle decks on you, you took them because it increased your allocation of other things. Whereas in 2021, when I recognized that slowdown was starting to occur, I started to kind of push back a little more on not wanting certain types of those things or giving the distributor heads up of like, hey, I don't want any of this product so that they wouldn't allocate me any or have the expectation that I would take any. And that was mainly just because um, I think we kind of hit that ceiling of where people's allocations were going to increase, at least in the short term, just because of how many clients they had. So I didn't see a lot of upside to taking that stuff, but I did see a lot of downside in getting, stuck with it.
Mm.
I still have hundreds of those Corviknight and Lycanroc decks that will probably never sell. Especially since they can't even be cashed for bulk at this point. And we can get to that topic another day. But so I started reining back on that and kind of just readjusting my focus. Now, I knew that in 2022, I was going to be having to do a move for my wife's career, which would kind of take some time away from the things that I could do just in terms of because I would have to, buy a house, get our other house prepped to put on the market and sell and move and then get everything organized. And I originally was going to try, I talked about this recently in just kind of my welcome back video for YouTube is that I was originally going to try to do this seamlessly, like, pack everything up on a Friday night, my computer and everything behind me and start back again on Monday, And I realized very quickly that was not realistic. And so it was pretty early in 2022 when I kind of really took my foot off the gas on Pokemon and kind of, okay, I'm going to bust out and get taxes done. I'm going to start looking for houses and kind of, slowly mixing content where I can. And that was where I really started to feel like I needed to transition away from, I had done that sponsorship with CGC where they sponsored the channel, and I had done the membership program and things like that. And I kind of just cut both those off because I just didn't feel like I was going to be able to dedicate the time that those deserved.
Mm.
And, I didn't essentially want to, take a deal or other people's money for me not putting in 100% of effort. So I ended up cutting those down. And that was kind of what led into that trickle of like, you know what, I needed to just like take a step back. Like it got to the point where I had so much on my plate trying to organize all of this that it became a situation where if I just put this on hold for now, even though in the short term it's really going to hurt, it'll be better for me long term. And that was a really hard decision that I had to make. But so I did. I just cold turkey stopped doing YouTube about 3 months ago to probably around when this would air, three and a half. Obviously, I'm in a new place, so I did manage to get all that figured out. And now we're back, and now I can focus on it. And so part of my focus and readjustment since I've been here is not only transitioning everything over, but kind of transitioning it in a way I always envisioned that I'd be able to operate, setting up my day to day to where everything's exactly where I want it, and that I'm not just functioning in a space because, well, I'm only going to be here a few years, so who really cares? Because I'll have to redo it anyways. So how have I always envisioned I want everything? Like for example, right now you guys can't see it, but I have my microphone right in front of me, but I also have another boom arm over there where I can have an overhead card cam. But I have the camera set up here right now to where I can just take the camera off that stand, put it up there, move my things around, use my computer on a day to day. I don't know if you guys know this. You probably don't for many of you because this might be your first time seeing it, but for any of our old viewers, my camera actually used to go between my two monitors. So I had two monitors. The camera would go between it. So anytime, but like you couldn't swing it back and forth because it hit the sides of the monitors. So like anytime I wanted to use my computer, I would have to look on either side of my camera. And like that's so like I felt like I was like I Dream of Genie or whatever. I just dated myself really hard there. But like I did, and like I always knew it'd be better, but at the time I didn't want to buy like a really fancy arm to like hang my camera up on, not knowing what my desk space would look like when I moved, and that like now I might have this arm that I don't need. Like right now I've got like 3 C922 Logitech webcams, like 3 arms, like all kinds of clamp clips and all kinds of stuff that like I don't even need anymore because I don't need any of that for the space I'm in. Like what a waste of money. And so that's what I was trying to avoid. So I like some of this stuff was like harder. So a lot of what I've been doing over the last few months has been transitioning to where the time I'm putting into this stuff is focused on the stuff, not the processes that get the stuff done. And so that has made the store transition a lot easier. It's made my day to day a lot easier, which will allow me to have more time to either expand the store out or expand my content out, or maybe both, or even travel to events or bridge into new things. Like I want to do a new channel and a lot of content for the One Piece TCG. It's something I'm really excited about. And so that's kind of been my focus over the last few months, at least, is just getting everything in a spot where I feel like I've optimized everything the most I can so I can focus on what's really important to me. And that's, doing the stuff that I've built all this around. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people maybe don't put as much emphasis on, is because they want to do the stuff that they don't build the framework for the stuff. And so now that I'm here, that's what I'm doing. So obviously there's still things to go. I don't have any of my furniture behind me or any of that because buying furniture right now is a nightmare. But it's a working process, but I've got plans for it all. And so now that I'm here, that's kind of what was, you reached out to me and said, hey, let's do this again. And it kind of was just perfect. We just came to this point where like we were both kind of at this turning point in our lives, and it lined up right at the same time. And maybe it was because, Pokemon kind of as a market has, I wouldn't say collapsed, but like it's in a recession, right?
Well,
And I think people get to that point where it goes into recession and they don't want to leave. So they kind of start thinking of, how do I rework myself within this new framework, right? And I think that's kind of us right now, right? Is that, and yet then we also in our personal lives have a lot of new going on, and so we combine those together, and it creates a good time to start this now, and that's pretty much my path from there to here.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on your forever home, and I'm sure there will be plenty of changes that you make over time, and you'll find use for that stuff, or we'll give it away or something. I don't know. I'm giving your stuff away for the viewers. Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I think it's very mature from those decisions you made, because I like absolutely, if you had gone in thinking you could take on everything that you're already taking on with all those life decisions, it would have just fallen apart everywhere. And it's so important to have like every little aspect in your life. Well, I guess the few big aspects of life working so that everything else can work, like, family, home, friends, social life, having all those big key aspects of your life working allows the other ones to really thrive. So, that's big. And yeah, I mean, you'll listen to a whole bunch of different content creators of dive in, just do it. Don't worry about the other stuff. And others say, figure out the stuff first, then you can dive in and do it. So, it's just really a matter of like who you are and what type of person you are and how much you have taken to build.
I think that's you and me, man. Yeah. Like you are a very dive in and do it. And I am a very like, all right, I'm going to plan it out and I'm going to have like my phase one. Like I'm like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like I've got my phases and I'm like my drawing on my board. And you're just like, let's do it, baby. Endgame, Avengers Endgame, let's go.
Well,
Like we're there.
yeah,
Like, and but I think both ways can be successful. Like I think a lot of it just comes down to what environment does each individual thrive in.
yeah,
Like I do thrive under pressure, and I thrive on giving myself a small framework of time to do something. Like I'm a procrastinator because I almost need like less time to do something that makes me like motivated to do it. Whereas if I have more time, I just like put it off and put it off. But I still like to plan. I still like to like my plan is to procrastinate and have like X time frame and use my other time for, X, Y, and Z thing. Whereas, someone like you, you're more of like a jump in and get it. And,
I hate
I might
planning.
make a few more mistakes than if I planned, but I'll have more time to overcome those mistakes because I plan. Whereas, if I procrastinate on my plan and something happens, well, now I have no time left.
Yeah,
So
I get as logical to as I can to a point before I'm just fired up and emotional and want to just dive in and go after it and follow my gut. And yeah, it definitely leads to a lot of difficult scenarios, but it also like opens up so many doors. So having someone like you on the other side that I can talk to every now and then is very important to my life and to my hopefully future success.
I agree with you though, like because you're not scared to be like, hey man, I think you're overthinking it a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
like I think you're like, on hole 13 when you should be on hole one. Like, and I think having people in your life is like a good balance. And I want to transition this into collecting because we see this with collectors a lot. They'll kind of get in the hobby and they'll talk about, it's funny. I don't even know if Gary Vee's still in Pokemon, but the reason I want to bring Gary Vee up is because I think of this, like this popped in my head when I was saying this, but like I think collectors a lot jump into the hobby and like, okay, I'm going to research, I'm going to figure out really like a big collection goal. And then they like start doing that and they kind of get bored of it. So they're like, all right, I'm just going to start buying stuff, because like
Yeah.
that's the fun part, right? And I think Gary Vee, like to some degree, was that. Like, I remember when he wasn't even going to do Pokemon. He said he just wasn't going to do it. It wasn't his thing, but he understood why people do it because like Pikachu couldn't get injured or whatever, like that, like that like
Th-
soundbite became a thing.
Yeah.
But then when he was going to do it, he talked about how, he's going to do it but he's going to do like 7 months of research or whatever he said, like tons of months of research. And then next thing you know, he's buying and he's talking about red cheeks versus yellow cheeks Pikachus and he's got a Charizard on his Instagram and he's, because like, and I think a lot of people fall into that. Like a lot of the times that the preparation and the things that you need to do to be the most successful or the most optimized are also some of the most tedious, most boring, least fun things that make your hobby not feel like a hobby or fun. And so then you just jump in and start making mistakes, which
Yeah.
for some is okay. But for others that ends up becoming the end of the road almost because they either hit burnout or they're frustrated or whatever. Did you ever experience any of that? Like when you
Oh,
kind of got into this?
Yeah, multiple times. But to speak on Gary Vee, I think he just uses that narrative of 7 months to sell off everything he bought to the people that listen to him for that 7 months.
True. Okay,
Because
I understand that.
there's not a chance that guy does 7 months of research. He just reaches out. He's got such a huge network, which is really important for him, that he figures out. He's got a good network. He figures out exactly what to do right away, and has done it so many times in his past that he just goes all in on something, preaches it, and then yeah,
He crowdsources the research, right? So he
yeah,
gets his 7 months worth of research. He just doesn't have to manually do it because
yeah,
he has enough people in his network that okay, this guy's done the 2 months here, 3 months there, and like then he just pulls it all together and he like essentially grabs the Cliff Notes version of it, right? So
right,
like maybe at that point for time like time versus value ratio, he's like 90% optimized and he may still make like 10% of the mistakes that were avoided if he like did the nose to the grindstone research, but for his overall time and value it makes sense to do it that way.
right,
It's
and
when his viewers and followers then try to replicate that, not understanding the variables, and that's
right. And I mean, we could have a whole conversation on that, and that's like
sure.
why there's value in experts, right? That's why I was able to like be a consultant with Whatnot, was because they could pay me for my information, and cut 7 months of research down to one. So, and that's why people watch other YouTubers and are on Patreon and do all that stuff, because there's value there. So Gary just understands that. The people that listen to him might not, and yeah, so that's how it works. But yeah, back to burnout. I mean, I've definitely gone through that multiple times. I mean, as you said, and as people will learn how kind of sporadic and intuition driven I am, I will go into something way too hard without planning at all. And when other things come up, I just kind of take them on as they are presented to me and not thinking about everything else that is happening and how it can fit in and organically, make everything work in a smooth, well organized, well oiled machine. So, um, yeah, like I quit my job in September of my real job in September of 2020 as Pokemon was blowing up. I recognized that it was a time to dive all in on it, like catch up on my backlog, sell things, like take this risk that not many people do or have the opportunity to do. And with the way that the world was and where collectibles and Pokemon specifically went, within months I was full time selling on eBay, doing multiple podcasts, working for a startup, travel like flying all over the world, going somewhere every weekend for consultations or events or whatever. I took on so many things that I got burnt out within like a couple months. And I had I had very specific goals that I wanted to do, and they were all laid out for me, ready for the taking. But I just took on everything instead of sticking to, those few specific goals, staying disciplined and not falling off my path. But obviously, I fell off the path. I was taking on way too much. I kept changing my mind on what I wanted to do, and yeah, I burnt out on everything because I was just not staying focused and not staying disciplined. I wasn't staying grounded. I got my head up. I got my ego up. Like I took on so many things, and yeah, got burnt out. Took time off, came back, got burnt out again after like a couple weeks because it takes time. It takes a lot of experience to learn and to really like sit back and understand how things can work. Because as an entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, nobody really knows what they're doing. You go through life thinking like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to figure this out as it goes. And yeah, that's kind of how it works. But you also have to realize that you need to stay disciplined and focus on a few specific things and not take on everything that is presented to you. If that makes any sense at
So
all. I feel like I just
no,
started
no, no,
babbling.
it does. The reason I I'm coughing because I had COVID. I am over COVID now. I just have this like lingering residual cough. That's why I'm coughing. So I'm not. So if you guys want to count my coughs and start a cough counter, that'd be swell. But
Swell.
anyways, I'm trying to like do it quietly, so I'm not like like good story right on yeah. So, but no, what I wanted to ask you there is, and we've talked about burnout before on our own individual channels, on other people's channels, on Collectible Conversations, the old one. We've talked about burnout before, but one of the things that kind of sounds like it's a repeating theme is taking on too much,
Yeah.
and that's leading you to the burnout. So I think something that could be helpful for people listening is, what are you doing differently now? What is, because they're saying, okay, I revamped my Instagram, revamping my YouTube, doing Collectible Conversations, and it sounds like that same thing, right? Is I'm taking on too much. So what's different about this time than those times?
Uh, being a being very strict to setting a schedule, becoming, what's the word, routine. There's a word for being, like, for just setting a routine.
Diligent?
Yeah, sure.
Like staying diligent?
Yeah, and again, going through all that and understanding what I am capable of doing as a single person, not having any employees, all that stuff, right? So when I before I reached out to you to start this podcast up again, I sat down with myself and was thinking, all right, I can go a few different routes with podcasting. I really enjoy doing this. A lot of people are doing it now. People are doing lives, but where do I see the most benefit for my personal sanity and for growing my brand? And I looked back at everything that I had done and found the most enjoyment out of doing this specific podcast with you. And I said, there's not a chance I'm doing my own solo podcast talking to a camera with no one else. I don't want to go back to scheduling and discussing the same thing over and over again with every single collector creator out there. It's being done and redone. I want to have a solidified schedule where I can do this once a week with you. Sure, it's gonna, get mixed up every now and then with what time we can record, but it's very low lift to do something like this with you every week. When it comes to the my specific Radar channel, I'm gonna stick tried and true to 3 times a week of doing videos. I'm going to stay very consistent with the type of videos that I'm doing instead of being all over the place. So I am adding planning into my life and direction. So I've blocked out time for when I record and when I edit. I'm also messing with the idea of having an editor do a video a week for me or something, just to see how it works, see how it goes. It's quite expensive, but why not take the risk?
I mean, if it saves you time, and
Right.
that time allows you to do other things that then generate revenue, like it's balanced. But
Yeah.
it sounds like this time maybe more than others, then your big focus change is it kind of all falls under the umbrella of like structure. Like
Yes.
you're planning out a structure, which is pretty anti-radar. Like if we're being honest,
Yeah.
like to you. So I assume that's kind of been a big adjustment. Like has that been a struggle for you to like kind of implement this structure in terms of like, all right, I'm going to do these things at these times each day and like all of this, or has it actually been, felt pretty good?
It's felt pretty good. It's definitely a huge mental strain. I've been reading a lot of books and doing a lot of self-reflection on life and past things on opportunities that I've either messed up or yeah, whatever you want to say. I don't like to live with regret. No regret. Everything that I've done has been fantastic and has led me to here. So, yeah, I mean, it's easy to write down. It's easy to picture it, visualize it, but yes, it is quite difficult to take action with all of it. So, I've learned just to like block out times for specific things in my day. Whether I get it done or don't get it done, I don't think about it during the rest of the day. So yeah, there's definitely been days where, I had my block of time where I'm supposed to be filming or editing, and I just didn't do any of it at all. But I have set myself up at this current time for that, knowing that as I build into a more regular schedule and work on my discipline, work on my personal, health and all that stuff, that I've set myself up to where if I do miss a day, miss 2 days in a week, I will be more than happy with the amount of productivity that I can put out there until I'm able to really fill in that self discipline and hit it hard every single day. But yeah, again, setting other blocks too for reading, or for spending time on new hobbies. I mean, that was one of the biggest mental struggles for me when I turned Pokemon into a full-time job, was I no longer have a hobby. So, taking that and making that big life change was a very hard mental shift. But yeah, I've picked up golf again. I've picked up working out and running and doing all that stuff. So having new hobbies, having the hobbies on the side of having this as work is extremely beneficial to my mental health and physical health as well.
It almost sounds cliche because like we hear it, right? You need a good work-life balance. You need to have things outside of, but like it really is. And
Yeah.
if you've ever been in the hobby, like I think anyone that was like in the hobby in 2020 can relate to this to some degree. The like you're almost too in it. You're your whole world is being consumed by it. You feel like if you log off, you're going to miss something. You feel like if you're not actively talking in these circles with every spare minute you have, you're going to miss something, some opportunity, some conversation, some drop, some whatever, to where you can't detach from it. And then you get to the point where you you burn out, like you said, or you start to loathe the hobby or have like some kind of like disdain or resentment towards it. Or you stick into the hobby and you just give up all that other stuff and the hobby becomes your life and your personality and everything, which I guess for some it's fine.
Yeah.
But I actually think that's like a rather unhealthy thing. I think people they get too sucked into the hobby and give up too much of their other stuff and it becomes like their personality. And I'm speaking largely from like me when it's happened to me. Um, you start like it becomes so easy for everything that happens. And I'm speaking specifically from like Pokemon here, for everything to feel so much more impacting and monumental than what it is. Some little drama thing starts. Oh my god, it's like this is the craziest thing ever. Like your whole world's like revolving around this. And or some issue happens with a product release, and it's like, oh no, like you almost like attach your self worth to
Yeah.
these events that are occurring, even though there's like a whole global population of 7 billion other people that like do not care about any of this in any sense of anything. And that it's just you almost need those things to kind of tether you back to reality in some regards. And I don't think that there's inherently any degree of being too in the hobby, as long as you are tethering yourself back in other things and stepping outside of it every once in a while. The meme touching grass.
Yeah.
Like as long as you're
Go
like
outside, guys.
doing some of those other things. What?
Go outside. Like get some
Yeah,
fresh.
yeah, going outside. Yeah, yeah. Like, but like that's well, because I've literally had people like, man, you need to touch grass.
Yeah.
Like that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, man. Like, but like yeah, going outside. And like for me, that has helped. So, like one of the big things that I've always talked about is like, oh yeah, when we move, when we do this big transition, blah blah, I'm gonna do all X, Y, and Z, all these things. And I think a lot of people, including myself, thought that was just talk, right? It was just excuses. And in some regards it was, because some of those
Yeah.
things like working out and eating healthier, I could have just done where I live, but didn't want to, right?
Right.
It's much easier to order a pizza, which is my favorite food, than it is to like eat healthy when I'm picky,
Dude, the pizza,
So
let me tell you, the pizza out here in Jersey, best I've ever had in my life. I will miss the food dearly. The Italian food out here is absolutely incredible.
So I'm eating healthy and Radar's killing me. So welcome to Collectible Conversations. No, but like the and we can debate pizza another day because
Yeah.
Mother Bear's in Indiana #1. But
Oh,
the I don't even know where I was going with this. Oh, food, like eating healthy, doing all those things. Like I have started to make that transition and that change. COVID
good.
did throw a little ripple into it. I kind of wanted to start all of this about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
That took me out for about a week and a half, and then even once I kind of got back, I was still experiencing fatigue, cough, and all that stuff. But now that I've really gotten to it, I've started working out each day. My wife and I are working out together, which has made it more fun. Eating healthier, at least trying to eating just like meals at regular times instead of, again, like I said, I'll sleep when I get tired, I work whenever, so my diet would always go along with that, right? I
Yeah.
eat whenever I would eat, when I'm hungry. Like, so now I'm trying to like eat meals at regular times, work out at similar times, and like kind of start structuring things around that to where I can have a more normal, balanced life. And that also will then allow me to kind of plug in those regular tasks. So like, okay, I'm going to film a video and it's going to take this long, and I'm going to pack orders and they're going to take this long, and do all these things, and know how much other time I have left to allocate to these other things, and then make sure that I'm actually allocating it to them. If I want to read a book and I'm going to need 4 hours to read it, and I've got 4 days this week, hour a day, that type of thing, but to where I actually do it instead of like making excuses as to why I don't do it. And so like I can relate to you a lot in terms of like really adding that structure in, which I think was just really hard to do when everything was going crazy, because it was so easy to fall down that rabbit hole of just like Pokemon is everything. And I say that like having that tether is important, and it is. And one of the things actually that I'm currently filming a video for my channel on is the top 10 things that I think people should be doing right now as Pokemon's kind of in a recession. And one of those things is to establish that work-life balance, because I think easy it's really easy to like I said, fall into this thing, and really hard to establish one. But I think if another boom ever happens and you already have a really good one going into it, which I did not have,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to at least attempt to maintain it, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't guarantee that you will,
Yeah.
but at least you have that chance at doing it. Whereas trying to create a work-life balance in the heyday of everything is virtually impossible and is not going to happen.
And
And
it's so tough though, because well, I mean, there's a lot of things here, but like when there's a boom like that in this industry in collectibles, I mean, I hear it all the time from a lot of the older guys, like especially in sports, of like this past year, 2 years was better than the previous 30 or 20 or whatever the number is. And
yeah,
so you have to like recognizing those opportunities in this industry if you're doing it, full time or whatever for your life. You have to shift that work life balance, I think. I think you have to put more time into it and take advantage of that time. And maybe it takes until you're 60 or 70 to realize it, but thankfully I think you've gone through way more than I have, but I think this is probably my second, third boom of Pokemon. And it's recognizing that opportunity and recognizing how much you're able to put into it, and like you said, maintaining that work-life balance. But I think it does require a shift, and to everybody that work-life balance is different. Maybe for someone it's 80-20, 50-50, whatever it might be, right? But yeah, if you're like really in this industry and want to reap the benefits, I guess, of these boom periods, it does require a shift. But you can't take it dramatically and just throw everything into it because you will get burnt out. Um,
no, and
but yeah,
and I agree with you. Like that's why, like, when I say like it's not guaranteed that you'll be able to maintain it, like if another boom happens, is because there is some degree of understanding that like you do have to shift your priorities around. It's
yeah,
like I told my wife, um, right now doesn't concern me in terms of like Pokemon in recession, because I still believe in the relative fundamentals of Pokemon and what makes it strong and makes it a strong IP in general. In terms of like, will we ever have another 2020? I don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows. But in terms of the hobby still being a strong hobby, something people care about, something people put their money into and buy products and things like that for years to come, absolutely. So like I'm not really worried right now. I I recognize that like I did that grind of 2020, 2021. I capitalized as much as I could. Obviously, I've got certain things that I wish I would have done differently or better. I'm sure we all do. But I navigated it with the information I had at the time the best I could. And now I recognize that now is kind of more the time to go back to the status quo of what I, would have experienced in like 2017, 18, 19, 2015, 14, things like that.
yeah,
The reason I skipped 16 there is because we had a boom in 16 as well. And, so that you kind of, when those years do come along, if they do come along, that you have that big boom period, you lean into that more. You work more. I think one of the big narratives that really got strung, like within, we have a shared Discord, by the way. Check the description link below, all that. Yeah, join our Discord.
yes,
But
please.
one of the things that kind of became a narrative in like 2020, for me, was like, do I ever sleep? That was the
Yeah,
joke. Do I ever sleep? You're working all the time. Like I feel like you're always online, like doing something involved in the hobby, and I was, but it was because I lived through it in 2016. I saw what a run up looked like. I saw what the downtrend in 2017 looked like,
hmm,
and then I remember how hard I had to work in 17, 18, and 19 to make the same amount of money I made in 16.
yeah,
And so I knew that, every hour I work in 2020 might be worth 10 hours in 2023. And so to me, it was worth more to try to capitalize on that. Now, there's a lot of other factors and variables that went into it, and making sure that, we hit our milestones in our personal lives and things like that. But I knew the value of what I was getting out of that time I was putting into it. And that's why it's so much easier now for me to kind of leisurely like take a step back and be like, oh, it's okay if sales aren't as good this week. It's okay if X, Y, and Z things don't happen, because I put in that time on the back end. I've already put in that time to make the next cycle, right? Assuming that Pokemon does go in cycles and that there would be another boom period eventually. I put in that time for that cycle. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to rest on my laurels, foot completely on the brake. We're just chilling, see you guys in 5 years and whatever. But it means I can have a life. I can work 8-hour days, feel comfortable with what I'm producing, and recognize that if I want to produce more, I can grind out more. But to have the expectation that I'm going to grind out equivalent to what I was doing in that time when every variable was going in my favor, not realistic. And so I think having that understanding, and I think that's why right now we see so many people that lean into like you know, this is the best time to buy. This is the best time to when in reality nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
This could be a long winter for Pokemon, but it's so easy to do that because we all want to latch on to that 2020 feeling of the time we're putting in being that productive.
Yeah.
When in reality, the time we put in 2020, 2021, and that productivity is just like the prices unsustainable for the time that you're putting in. And where a lot of people were making their money or they're getting bigger collections or whatever with that productivity, somebody else was losing on the other side. Like in reality, every single one of those big gain transactions, somebody did lose on the other side of that because somebody had to be at the end, and so that's an unfortunate, yin and yang of like this whole thing. But in terms of productivity, I think there is a real danger in almost pushing too far, pushing like continuing on and not accepting a reality for what it is, that now we are back to more of a normal. I would actually argue that Pokemon's still healthier in a recession right now than what it was in most standard years. Standard 2017 to 19, every booster box was $90. Like just period, $90. Like distributor costs back then were, I think your biggest of big stores, like unobtainable for most, was like $75 a box, and your average store that's buying like a case on a release is probably paying like 82 to 84. And now I think the average store is probably paying like 85, maybe even 90. But boxes themselves, right, are, other than the ones that went through that big reprint wave craze thing, whatever, you're looking at like 110 on release. I think was Astral Radiance 115. They've kind of stabilized at like 103 to 108. That's better percentage wise than what it ever used to be in terms of what you're paying versus what you're selling. And in terms of, I think just overall sales are slower and maybe demand is slower because a lot of people are scared right now. So there's like that transition phase of everyone kind of figuring out where the market's at. I think a lot of people want to buy really heavily right now because, well, how can stuff go any lower, right? Even though the reality is the floor for everything is zero.
Yeah, it's just a matter of supply and demand. Like when you break down any market, it just comes down to supply and demand. Supply skyrocketed because demand skyrocketed. Supply never slowed down. Demand is slowed. Like that's what it comes down to. Like, and you can never predict.
Most people have gathered that, right? Like I think that's easier to measure than my value of my time. And I think that's the big thing like that I'm getting to here is that like people need to adjust that your time is just worth less now because you are not making as much, or most people are not making as much as what they were a year and a half ago for the same amount of time put in. And that's a mental adjustment that you're going to have to go through. And if, as a community, we keep forcing these narratives of, oh, well, now's the time to buy because you're trying to make your time more valuable than what it is. And like, so that you're actively progressing towards some kind of a future goal. You're actually just really at risk of putting yourself in like really dangerous situations where you burn all your liquidity out, or you get hung with a bunch of inventory, or you end up overpaying on things that you take a loss on. And I don't hear this, really talked about enough.
I've got plenty of those to talk about.
What'd you say?
I've got plenty of those to talk about.
Plenty of those. Well, yeah. The losses,
Yeah.
we've started hearing more about losses, but I just think that like the value of our time in the hobby, I think isn't talked about as much. And
Yeah.
I think what we're talking about right now, though, kind of leading this, tying this all together, the optimizing, creating a schedule, creating a good foundation, so that not only if there is another boom in the future, we can capitalize on it, but just so that the time that we're putting in right now, we are squeezing out every ounce of value out of it that we can get, recognizing that it has less value than what it did before. So we're going to have to put in more effort, have a better structure, have a better lifestyle, have more stabilization to make our time worth as much as we can make it worth, even if it maybe isn't worth as much, with the hopes that someday there will be that big uptick again. And now we're just that much better set to ride that wave right on up.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
go ahead.
oh no, you
Yeah. And like in the other side of going all in on it, like you said, a lot of people start to kind of tie their identity to Pokemon and to this thing. And with how big it got, all the people on social media getting 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 followers, thinking that they're something when now everybody is at that point. I mean, I remember when 10,000 followers on a Pokemon account was like, there was one of them and that was it. And now there's so much different type of content and things that people are putting out. But yeah, people are going so hard at it and they're tying their identity to it, not understanding the cycles of the market. Not, and I mean, I don't even know what the cycle of content in this world will look like now with, since that's kind of new, honestly. It's like and we've always had Unlisted Leaf, Lean Heart, Real Breaking Nate type. But there's such a new drive of content being put out there. I have no idea what that looks like. Like, are people going to really be able to build a sustainable business off of it outside of the pack openings, so who knows what that has to lie. I mean, I've seen collectors tie their identity, big collectors tie their identity to their collection. And when things change, it really starts to hurt them mentally. And, that's something that you really got to look out for is not tying that, your ego to something that you can't control, which is the greater market of Pokemon, the brand of Pokemon. Like, it's nothing that you can control. It's just a tool that you can use to build off of. Like, I've been watching the Smash documentary again, the Super Smash Melee, which you pointed that out earlier before we started filming. Boom.
Yeah, you got your Melee back there. Obviously I don't have mine here available, but I do have one now. Finally,
Yeah,
I've joined your club.
Thank you,
So.
thank you. It's a very exclusive club.
Yeah.
But there's a little moment in the documentary of one of the guys getting interviewed of how, like, he says he didn't find himself within the Smash community, but he found another self in the community. Like, as a person in his real life, he was, very calm, very kind of shy, calculated. But when it came to Smash, he became very arrogant, very, just kind of abruptive because of the game. Like, it just brought out a competitive side to him. And he was it seemed, at least in that conversation, in that little snippet, that he was just being very aware of the fact that it's another aspect of his life. It's not only his life. So you have to really separate these things, sit down, understand, separate these things, take the business away from your personal life, get that mental health, get that mental idea kind of separated so that it doesn't affect the other important aspects of your life. So that's really important, I think.
You said when you said the word mental, it reminds me of Marshawn Lynch. In football, he'd always say, "Work on your mentals."
Yeah.
Work on your mentals, and that's like a thing that he's really big on. Is that like to really focus on your mental health? And I know that's like a big talking point right now, almost to the point that it feels like it's becoming cliche.
Yeah.
But it is really huge though in this hobby to be able to disconnect. Right? We get push notifications to our phones. You check your email and you've got an email from some store about a sale. It's everywhere. It's everything. And it's so easy to always keep yourself attached in some little way. And you know, I I might be misquoting here, but I'm pretty sure I saw in a comment one time that Charlie Herlocker, who's obviously really well known
Good friend of the show.
collector, businessman, enthusiast in the hobby, will like shut his phone off like at a certain time at night. Like I'm pretty sure that I saw him comment that somewhere. If it wasn't him, it was someone else. I'm sorry, but I think it was Charlie, and he seems like the like pragmatic guy that would do something like this.
Yeah.
That like when his phone goes off at like a certain time at night, like it's off. Like business is done for the day. You know what I mean? Um and I remember seeing that and just thinking like, man, that must be so hard to do. Because like I'm the guy that, when I starting the store and I would sell bulk lots on Amazon, at least back in the day, I assume it's still this way. It's probably worse. But they used to have like 63 metrics they'd track you on. Like if you broke down all the percentages and all the categories and everything, it was crazy. And one of them was customer service response time to messages. And it was 24 hours that you had to respond with. But like one of the metrics that would track was like 12. So it was like 12 and 24. And I had and it would count your whole day. And it like conditioned me to like always be checking my email to, because I got to make sure there's not a question there that I need to respond to the point that I literally at one point had my message response time of minimum of 100 messages because I always tracked the months that had like 100 messages
Mm-hmm.
to like 47 minutes.
Wow.
So like think about that. Any 47-minute interval of a 24-hour span, I had checked. So like I remember I'd wake up at like 2 a.m, go to the bathroom, check my phone. Oh, message, go to my computer, respond to it, and go back to
Mm-hmm.
bed. Like, and it was so unhealthy.
Oh,
But
yeah.
like I didn't detach, because like at that point I felt like I couldn't, right? My whole livelihood was riding on this. But as I've gotten more comfortable, and part of that was I just started with minimal resources and didn't put myself in a position to feel comfortable. Whereas as I've gotten more comfortable and kind of set better boundaries, I took all my notifications on my phone off. So like my phone will not get any notifications related to the store anymore. And I can turn those back on at like 8 a.m. and shut it off at like 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And that way, like, if obviously I've got things set up like if there was an emergency or something, somebody hacked my store account and like is selling all my stuff for $0, like that kind of thing. But like I'm not gonna get like, random Billy Bob says, "Hey man, can I get a back picture of that CGC 7 card that's listed at $14 at 9:30 at night?" And I feel obligated to go respond to it. You know what I mean? I'm probably
Yeah.
not even gonna respond to it at all anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
No, that's
But
not.
no, probably not.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, but setting those boundaries, and I think this goes back to just kind of like building that structure and learning all of our places within this. And I know that today listening to this probably feels less like collectibles, but to me right now with where I'm currently at in my whole process of Pokemon in the store and content and everything, this right now, what we're talking about, feels like all of collectibles to
Yeah.
me. Like the last thing I want to do is sit and go research prices on TCG Player when I feel like I can improve the structure of what I'm doing so much more and make everything I'm doing more efficient, everything I'm doing healthier for me, which in the long run I know will make the store do better. It'll make my content better. It'll make people appreciate the content I'm putting out more. It will make my bottom line of my business better, and so that to me right now, this feels like the collectible era, and it feels like for maybe the first time that I've ever felt, 2017 specifically felt like a really rough year. That was 2016 was a big boom period. It was the 20th anniversary of Pokemon. And then 2017, everything came tumbling down. Bulk crashed. Everything was worth nothing. Nobody was doing anything. Shows were abysmal. And a lot of like the expenses of running a business hadn't adjusted accordingly. A lot like right now. And so it was one of those situations where I felt like what I was doing was not correct. And it probably wasn't. Whereas right now, I think kind of for the first time after coming off something like this, I feel like what I'm doing is right. I feel like our focus and where we're putting our time and energy is what we should be doing. Because it's almost like we're trying to set ourselves up for either the next big wave or the next big pivot, right?
Mm.
And that pivot could be to something else. It might not even be Pokemon, but we're setting ourselves up for wherever this big transition takes us because you can't make a big transition or ride a big wave without a good foundation. And I think that's something, it's like if you're surfing and you're ready to catch the wave, but if your surfboard has a bunch of holes in it, you're just going to sink. And I think it's that same idea. And a lot of us don't spend enough time waxing our surfboards, and we leave them out in the rain. So then I don't know, do surfboards rust? I've never surfed. I don't know.
I don't know
This is a terrible analogy. But like, it's, like we don't spend enough time airing up our tires, and we don't take enough care to put our vehicle in the garage. So then it sits out in the rain and rust. That's probably better. I don't know. Guys, give me a break. It's the first one back. I'll have better analogies. Get out of the comment section, Billy. Jeez.
Dude, I'm excited to see the change of lighting of my side during this whole video.
How many Machamps in the background are lit up by the end of this? Yeah. It's like a Hollywood Squares board or something. Also dating myself with that show. But
jeez, but yeah, no, like making adjustments, being flexible, being coachable or whatever. There's so many whatever word is extremely important, and like it takes so many years to get to that period because like you're just learning the business, you're learning the cards, but like you get to a point where you have to focus on, I guess, bigger ideas, bigger things in the aspects of your business in order to truly improve it and set yourself up for whatever is to come. So, yeah.
Well, do you see this horse? Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yes, we have beat him. He is dead.
Yeah.
Not a real horse, imaginary horse, but we beat that horse to death. So I want to ask you something else. I want to completely pivot. A total tangent pivot. We're changing it up. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, you're like you at statue mode. I was like, did he freeze? Is he good? Yeah, no. Okay, he's just really intent on what I'm about to say. This is important.
This is big.
Have you been following things close enough to know some of the current things happening, like in the hobby, events, releases, stuff like that? Any of that?
I've been following the events. Well, not specific Pokemon events, like shows and stuff. Special Delivery Charizard, obviously.
Big one. Big deal. Because there were some inadvertent early releases of that.
Just
right?
One, I thought.
One. Is it the one that it's called a Buckhead, right?
Yeah, in Australia.
Yeah.
That went to, I don't know if I'm allowed to say who it went to, but if he even still has it. Well, Buck sold it.
Did he move it?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, okay, because I just said who originally had it.
Yeah.
I don't know where he got it, but
yeah. So yeah, and that's been released via lottery system, I guess, in a way, right? You had to
well,
go ahead.
Did you do it? Did you send put in your stuff to get the email?
Yeah, I only did it once.
Yeah, I haven't gotten an email. So did I lose?
So yeah, so they put up a link on the Pokemon Center website. You had to put in your information in order to potentially get one of these special delivery Charizards, which is much different than both the Bidoof and Pikachu. I got an email saying thank you for your registration or whatever.
Yeah, I got that one.
And then there was so then apparently I remember I could pull the email up maybe, but it said that within a 12-week period we'll let you know if supplies last, if you're gonna get one. You get a code and you have to spend $20. So it's ended up being exactly like the Pikachu release, except you have a special code for it. And you only get one.
Out essentially people doing repeats. So I wonder if the 12-week thing is to try to weed out people cheating the system, or
I think they're taking in. No, I think that's plenty of time to take in the amount of demand they have for it and figure out how much they can actually put out. So who knows how deep they'll go into it? Because I did too. I did two different names, 2 different addresses. Maybe they'll figure out an IP address thing and be like, oh, he doesn't get any because he did that, or we'll just send him one. I don't know how they'll do it. Who knows?
Well, and something else they have to consider is product, right? They need stuff on the Pokemon Center to buy. And if everyone's going to flood in there to spend $25 and
I bought so many sitting cuties when the Pikachu one came out. So,
well, and you don't want this, if you're them, right? Because 12 weeks, you want to be able to time how close or far you want this to be from your holiday rush. Because this type is the type of thing that could really pad a quarterly book statement, right? In terms of your sales. but you don't want it to be so, which is why it's probably 12 weeks, right? Not 12 months or something. You don't want it so close to Christmas that the stuff that was going to sell anyways because it's holiday
Well,
is now being like bought for this card. Like when you could double dip, right? Because people are going to spend 25 bucks if they wouldn't have before to get
yeah,
this card. So they can like
yeah.
capitalize twice essentially.
And I don't know if this pertains to Pokemon specifically, but if you've been paying attention at all to the outside world, of like Target and Walmart having insane inventory issues because they have so much and people aren't buying anymore because of the recession and the like the whole great resignation where however many million people left their jobs. Nobody has money to spend anymore. Huge inventory surplus all around the world, especially the US. Maybe this is perfect for Pokemon. Maybe they fell into that same trap and have insane inventory surplus. I don't know. But this is the perfect opportunity for them to dump it, to move it. And if they have that surplus, they'll be just fine going through the holiday as well. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know though. I haven't paid attention to like Pokemon statements I'm not a stock owner, so I don't go in and listen
Well,
to stuff. But
so the big thing swirling kind of because you were talking about the surplus of inventory and I saw that Walmart just discounted Bolton V boxes to like $15, big deal. Um, those things are worth like 7, the we're starting to see that. Like, when was the last time we saw a clearanced Pokemon product at a major box store? I mean, it was
2002.
2019, and that was like Fates Collide ETBs,
Yeah.
and um but there was another big report that came out that Pokemon had printed 9 billion cards. And there's a
Yes.
big debate now over whether or not these cards are, how many of them are Japanese, how many of them are English, how many of them are premium cards. If you just take like a standard booster pack of 10 cards, only one of those is probably going to be a hit. And even then, it's like a crap hit. So, like, how many of those are actually ultra rares? And I actually did the math because I went through and I just thought, okay, so you generally get 7 ultras per box and a box has 360 cards. So then I factored that down um, to like dividing the total 9 billion by 360, multiplying it by 7, um, and like coming up with like how many. And it was like, I think it was like a few 100,000 ultra rares, or maybe it was like it was millions. It was millions of ultra rares.
It's
But then I broke that down by how many ultra rares there actually were across all the sets
yeah.
that were released in this period. And it's still a big number. Like if you were to like
Well,
this is obviously
it's
assuming
less.
that like
Think
huh?
think about all the energy cards and the ETBs and theme decks and stuff too.
Sure, sure. Oh yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. Oh, you're right. I didn't even think about like all your energies that you get
Yeah.
printed in your ETBs and things like that. Yeah, yeah. So I'm sure it's less, but like it was still a big number,
Yeah.
right? But I think what people are losing sight on, and dang, this is gonna lead into one of my bleps for the day, but we'll get there. But I think people are losing sight on just how much bigger the interest in the hobby has gotten. Like, take the boom period aside, take 2020 aside, even part of 2021. Now that demand has slowed, I would still argue Pokemon right now is more popular than it has ever been outside of a boom period. So, take 1999 out, 2016 out, and 2020, 2021 out. Take any other just like stable period, and I still think it's bigger now. I think the overall demand is bigger. I
Yeah.
think organic, I think the amount of collectors there are, the amount of money flowing through the hobby, the amount of interest in it. Like, I still think it's a really good time to be in the hobby, which means I think the market can absorb most of that stuff. Are there going to be certain things I think that were printed to that big demand that most of it gets re-injected into the market and it can absorb it? Amazing rares? Yes, absolutely. I do think that will happen. I mean, I saw a who was the person on Instagram? I think it was like Subliminals Pokemon or something like that that had posted a reel that they're probably not called reels. It shows you how bad I am at Instagram. But it was
That's
like
fair.
it was an amazing rare in a 10 that sold for 25 bucks. And a
Oh yeah.
PSA 1 of the same card sold for 27.
Yeah.
That I think is a great example where the market cannot absorb.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that there's like if you look at like alternate arts, right? Alternate arts are pulled at a harder ratio to get than what gold stars were. Like there are many case sets where you get one alternate art in a case,
Yeah.
or one alternate art VMAX and one alternate art V in a case, and it's like 2 per case, which would be equal to gold stars, which were generally 1 in 3 boxes.
One
And
and two.
so like, or 1 in 2, so even better. Yeah, yeah. I knew as soon as I said it, I knew it was wrong. Because it's there's generally each set had 3, and there's 6 boxes in a case, so it's 1 per 2. Yeah, I did the math wrong. But yeah, so generally gold stars were 1 and 2, whereas alternate arts are generally 1 and 3, if not like some of those sets were like 1 and 6 because they had such bad pull ratios. Like I think Battle Styles was pretty bad.
I pulled the Rapidash from Chilling Reign the other day.
That don't even get me started on that Rapidash. I think that card is so slept on. That card's sell-through rate, sheesh.
It's being given away too through my YouTube.
Oh, go follow his YouTube. Get yourself a great Rapidash sell-through rate, even through Pokemon Recession. I've actually sold quite a few of those alternate arts in like CGC 9. I kept my 9.5s. I don't think I got any 10s of Rapidash.
How many do you have?
Of alternate arts?
Yeah, of Rapidash.
Left?
Yeah.
I think I have 3 9s and then 9 5s. I think I have like 4 or 5.
Okay, just some interesting.
I only graded like 15.
Okay. People still don't do that.
No, those were not the ones I went big on. The ones I went, well, we'll get into that another day.
Yeah. No.
Anyways, that'll be a whole nother video. See, we're gonna string you along. But there were other ones I went big on though. But obviously Evolutions, right? That one.
Had to.
And I do own, by the way, I gotta brag. I do own, as far as I'm aware, it's still a pop 1. At least it was last time I looked, of Umbreon V alternate art from Evolving Skies in a perfect 10. It is a pop. So I don't know if there's any black labels of it, which in my mind is kind of the equivalent. But if there's not, dang, creme de la creme right there. But I like Umbreon a lot. I mean, it's number 2 to Jolteon, so that's pretty cool. But anyways, if you start thinking of that breakdown though, the alternate arts versus the like gold stars, right? The big difference there is just quantity printed. Like there's still a big demand for gold stars, the same way I'd argue there's big demand for alternate arts, but the amount of them that were printed was for the demand of the EX era back in like 2003, which was very low. And whereas today it's current. So when I hear a lot of people discuss things like, oh, Modern's not going to be worth anything, like I think that's the big narrative right now, since that, we've almost like done the full cycle, right? Like if you do you remember when we did old Collectible Conversations and I had that whiteboard on the wall and we drew that bubble graph? Do you remember that? That video is still peak. If someone goes, oh, you hid them all.
I'll put them back up.
That one, you should bring that one back up. If you were to go watch that one, we were pretty spot on. I think like to the first dip, we nailed it. It was like November, like mid-November, just absolutely crushed it. But the overall decline, I think the end decline took a little longer maybe than what we anticipated. But if you were to follow that graph, right? Imagine I have a bubble graph. Just go to Google and type in market bubble graph. We went through that phase of like, okay, it's declining. And then it was almost like people wanted, and this kind of goes back to the time efficiency to like write new narratives. So then it was like, oh, now it's just a great time to buy. And it was almost like that equivalent of like a dead cat bounce where like people are like trying to convince themselves the market's going to recover. So they buy and then it goes up and it's almost just like a bull trap. And so they buy in and then the sellers sell into them and then the stuff just tanks even harder, right? And then we've came down to that point where it's like fallen off. And so now we've went like that full distance of like half the people that were telling people like a month ago it was a good time to buy are now saying that like Modern's dead forever and none of it's worth anything. And the reality is just people don't know. And so that's why like they're getting conflicting stuff. So they just tell people what they want to hear at the time, which like I don't blame them because the algorithm feeds right into that. So like just tell people whatever the hell they want to hear. Yeah. But the reality is I by all metrics, betting on something like Modern sealed product or alternate arts is the equivalent of betting on that Pokemon's going to be able to stay relevant to a similar demand. And that even if like it almost doesn't even have to be the same though, right? Because like think about it like this. If demand just stayed linear, like dead heartbeat across the board, that would be, you would still have an upward trend because eventually you would have attrition of stuff over time, right? Stuff lost in the mail, stuff that gets damaged, stuff like whatever, right? New people come into the hobby as old people leave. So that would still cause an upward curve. So you almost don't even need it to stay level. You could even have it trail off a little bit, like a few percentage points. That's why like we see old stuff that didn't have big demand still eventually climbs in price because a lot of it gets attritioned off and you still eventually do get a small wave of people that come in and demand it. Like a great example of this would be black and white secret rares.
Mm,
Like Gardevoir, Golurk, Hydreigon, like those
yeah,
ones. Other than Charizard and Blastoise, nobody really cared about those. In fact, most of those were $10,
yeah,
like during that period. Whereas now most of those are extremely expensive.
yeah,
And it's not because they ever necessarily had like a massive spike in demand that went up, other than maybe, 2020 where everything had a massive spike in demand. But it was because as more people came in, you're always going to have new Gardevoir collectors joining, new Golurk collectors. Even though I know that's like a meme, right? A Golurk collector. But all it takes is three of them if there's
yeah,
only two on the market, right? And so like to me, when I think about things like is modern going to survive, alternate arts, kind of the state of the market as a whole, I start thinking about just like where do I think Pokemon is going to be? Is Pokemon as a company, their games, their marketing, all of that, are they making the right moves they need to make to stay relevant?
yeah,
I think the answer to that is just still yes. And at least in the short term.
yeah.
And so, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead. I'm going. Like this is
well, yeah, we
you're
could
the
just,
first person I've
it's,
gotten to vent all this to for like
and
months.
like the
So
thing is, like, if Pokemon stopped today, like, they just were like, all right, we give up, we're done. See you guys, have fun with what you have. Um, I look at this time period as like already a very nostalgic time period. There was so many pop culture shifts within Pokemon here that we'll be looking at this until the end of Pokemon. So all the new people that came in, all the new kids, this amount of product, so large, very comparable, I would assume, to base set era, right? It was a pop culture phenomena. Like we didn't have that until Pokemon Go didn't really treat the cards the way that we thought it did. That's why it was so quick, I feel like. But this is, in my eyes, very different. This is a very nostalgic period. So 20 years from now, the long game with modern, like specifically alt art sets, I think they're going to be an enjoyable open until the end of time. So, I see a lot of positivity in the modern market and its outlook for the future, even if Pokemon were to be irrelevant. Maybe not, if we're at peak prices or whatever. But you can't really figure out where that's headed. No one knows. But yeah, I look at it from a nostalgia point of view and what this time period says about the market and about Pokemon itself. So I like it. I appreciate it. And yeah, it's got a bunch of things going for it. Beautiful artwork, true rarity. Sure, there's billions printed, but it's still Pokemon comes down to like opening packs and enjoying it, both in business and personal stuff. I mean, all the box breaks and stuff like that, which I think that will go on forever. But yeah, I think this is a great time period. I think it's a great bunch of sets to sit and hold on to for 20 years, not a year, 2 years, 20 years. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
well, and we can break this down another day on another talk, but
Right.
like, your comment about like not 1 year, not 2 years, but 20 years, like that's the other thing. As long as interest in the hobby remains, eh, there will always be an upward trajectory for product as long as you can be the last one holding, right? So
Yeah.
like in theory, like that would not be the case. And I'm not saying this is everything, there's always going to be the exception. But as long as like for example, let's say there were 100 people in the world holding evolving skies boxes right now. If those boxes go up to $250 and 80% of the people sell them out and those go out into either collector hands, forever hands, opening, whatever. Now you only have 20% of the boxes that were being held back remain. If you have another wave to 310%, the 10 of the 20% get wiped out there. And you continue that trajectory on, that's what eventually happens to where then the few hands that hold them left, they do start that upward, like crazy upward trend,
Yeah.
is because they're not having the reinjection. The reason we're not experiencing this right now, like we would have with most other sets, is because so many injections of this product have came so late in their life cycles. Things like Battle Styles and Chilling Reign getting those additional waves that stores were putting in allocation for with distributors, but never thought they were
I
going to
mean,
get.
how's it any different than past sets? There's always been a 2, 3, 4 year life.
Because they came so much later
How late is it?
than that. Well, like for example, Chilling Reign came almost like 6 months after its release or something like that. Like
Yeah,
Battle
but
Styles,
sets were
Chilling Reign.
being reprinted for years.
But not to that degree, right? So think about it like this. When, Steam Siege comes out and they print Steam Siege is a bad example because it's 2016 set. What's 2017 set? Not Crimson Invasion, not Ultra Prism. Let's go with
Burning Shadows.
Burning Shadows had Charizard. You don't want to do that one. Let's go Sun and Moon base. That's a great one. Sun and Moon base. So Sun and Moon base set comes out. And then demand has moved on, right? Everyone wants Guardians Rising because it has Tapu Lele in it. Then they want Burning Shadows because it has Gardevoir, Gillespot, Charizard. Charizard's a big chase, huge, great, Guzma, full art, all that good stuff. Guzma. And so people have moved on from Sun and Moon. What are you laughing about?
Guzma.
Guzma, yeah. Hey, that card was great. But anyway, so people have moved on from Sun and Moon base, which had Espeon and Umbreon, but they didn't have huge demand. It had Gold Ultra Ball, but that was about it. And Sun and Moon was mappable, which didn't help. So, anyways, but they kept printing it, right? But stores weren't ordering it to their full standard new set allocation demand. They'd buy like a case to restock their shelves or whatever, and your average flipper, right, online store vendor, whatever, wasn't buying it at all because there wasn't any margin to be made because the product was readily available all the time. Whereas the problem that we encountered with like Battle Styles and Chilling Reign was that here you have Battle Styles and Chilling Reign available on the market and steadily holding their like 100, 110 prices, which is fine for a booster box. And then you have an injection of the equivalent as if the set had just released when the product's already still readily available and not being absorbed, and you're just stacking that much more on top of it. Okay. Combine that with the fact that these stores didn't think that they were actually ever going to get it, so they didn't save the funds or allocate the funds back for it. What'd they have to do? They had to dump it. They had to free up that capital. Yeah. All that's going to do is drive that price into the ground. But eventually that will still wither out in time. And we have experienced this before with other things. It actually happened with Evolutions in 2016 and 17 on the reprint waves of Evolutions that had came in like March of 2017 was a similar thing. Stores wanted more Evolutions because Evolutions was crazy selling until it wasn't. And nobody cared about it anymore. And then they got flooded with it. And that's why Evolutions flooded down and stayed $90 a box. And it was going to forever stay $90 a box until you had a massive wave of demand that came in that had never experienced Evo and wanted to experience it. And then that's when the set's true variables really came to light. It was a great nostalgic set. It had a Charizard, it had a full art Misty, it had a full art Brock, it had a lot going for it. And it had Mega Charizard. Yeah. Right? First full art Mega Charizard. So like that was a big deal. And so the variables came to light. But the market variables almost crushed that set, right? And it needed an anomaly or like the equivalent of a Black Swan event to change that cycle. And so will Battle Styles, will Fusion Strike, will those overcome that? Will it get its Black Swan event? Who knows? But everyone right now, I guess the bigger point I'm making is with this whole like talk of like alternate arts and singles, which comparing singles to sealed product is like the stupidest thing in the world for a lot of things. Like they're their own entities that like have a relationship in the middle, right? But like talking about is modern sealed product investable or is there money to be made? Is it worth putting back? And comparing it to 3 sets that had one of the most abnormal release cycles in terms of volume and amount put into circulation and how it was done. It like of anything, that's crazy. That doesn't make any sense. And to me, when I hear those comparisons being made, this sounds bad, but to me, it sounds like people that never experienced it the first time because we've already went through this before. We've seen what happens when this cycle goes. We saw what it took to save Fates Collide, Steam Siege, Evolutions. Those sets were not bad. those sets were not bad on release. Everyone that calls Steam Siege a bad set just makes me cringe because Steam Siege came out the gates blazing. That was one of the few sets where we had a basic rare in Talonflame that was like $10 out the gate, and the reverse holo was like 20 because it was playable. But the set was bad because bulk went to the moon that Christmas. So every set got opened into oblivion because nobody gave a shit what they pulled. All they cared was that they got the bulk out of it, dumped the code cards, sold the bulk lots on Amazon, made a ton of money, and who cares what you got out of singles? That's how I ended up with like 90 PSA 10 Mega Charizard full arts, was because I just graded them all. Because like nobody's buying the singles, so I might as well grade them. Maybe the graded ones will sell. And like, that's why those sets became bad and needed that like crazy anomaly of 2020 push to make them do something. But it didn't mean that every set came after it wasn't worth anything or ever did anything again. Burning Shadows is super juice. Just go to late Sun and Moon. Look at Team Up. Team Up's like $900 a box or like $875. Unbroken Bonds is like $470. Unified Minds is like $330. I mean, like, that logic just doesn't even hold, even in the context of like, well, it was the biggest boom ever and the most printed, like they printed to demand whatever. Like, Pokemon would literally have to retrace its full growth that it did all the way since 2019 for us to even begin talking about like Modern not being able to hold. That's why anytime I hear these like you should make like the title of this video should have something to do with Modern's like Investible. Not even because we're necessarily talking about investment, but because I know people will click. And if you've made it this far in the video, nice. But
nice.
But like literally, like this is just it peeves me so much because we've experienced it, and this is why I think history is so important. Now, one of my majors in college was history, so obviously I'm going to think that's important. But to me, this is so important because how can individuals or companies navigate moving forward if they don't know the foundation that everything was built upon, right? And like that's why I think talks like this are so important to put this information out there, because there's probably a ton of people that, I mean, there's gonna be a ton of people that just heard me explain why Steam Siege was not a bad set, and I could give you a dissertation on it, and yet we'll still believe it's a bad set moving forward because they'll hear 3 other YouTubers call it a bad set, like that kind of thing. But there will be some out there that hear that and realize, like, man, you know what? Maybe I should do more research around that era and why things happened the way they did, and see that a lot of that's playing out right now. It's the same reason I was able to tell people a year ago that bulk is going to crash, and it's going to crash extremely hard, and that will be your biggest like red flag indicator that the market's truly hit recession. And then what did we see? We saw Troll and Toad take all their bulk off about 2 to 3 months ago off the website, like virtually everything, that they're not buying any of it. And what have we watched? We've watched sales just come to an absolute screeching halt because bulk drives the underlying market. And I am making like a documentary style video on bulk and like how it drives the market and why and how it all started and everything like that. But that like this is stuff that like when we're in like kind of bring this full circle back, this whole podcast, like in the down period, like ways to maximize your time is sometimes you can make the most money by learning how people made or lost money previously in this hobby and then implementing that in the future when the right time comes. And like doing your due diligence, doing your research, learning these things, you know, getting into the nitty gritty. Like if you look at some of the greatest minds in the hobby, your TCA Gamings, your Gem Mint Pokemon, Charlie Herlocker, like some of these people that just make lots and lots of money in the hobby, they do it because they know more than the average person. And they invest their time wisely into a good balance of not just the hustle, but the research that backs it, because then they save so much time in those deals, in those negotiations, in the sourcing of stuff, because they know what they're looking for, what their targets are, what's worth their time, what's not, and what has happened before, and how they can leverage that for themselves into the future. I know I just went on a whole huge tangent rant here, but man, it feels so good to get back and talking about this stuff. Like if you can't see, I'm just like oozing out of my pores, just like Pokemon
I love it. We could probably go for 10 hours, dude. Like, I mean, you know, there's so much information out there and content in Pokemon now. Like before you had to make your own mistakes, but now you can just like learn from everyone else's mistakes and not make them. So if you put your time and effort into learning about that stuff, you can save yourself so much trouble, get so far ahead so quick without feeling the pain yourself. That's so important. Like you'll hear it all the time. Sure. Like I'm sure to the end of time of you have to experience, you know, mistakes and all that so you can learn from it. But that's not true. There's in big spaces like this now, you can learn from everyone else and not have to go through it yourself. Of course, there's always going to be things you do that you mess up with, but there's so much you can avoid now by listening to me, listening to you, listening to Charlie, whoever, and never having to go through those struggles. So I think that's a great time to actually wrap it up and dive into our Blips and Bleps.
Good. But before we go to Blips and Bleps, if you've made it this far in the video, I want a hashtag Steam Siege not a bad set in the comment. That's what I want. I want to see how many of those we can get. And if I see any hashtag Steam Siege is a bad set, we're blocking you off the channel. Just straight off the gate, day one. No.
We gotta kill meme siege. Meme siege is dead.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. If you believe Steam Siege is a bad set, write hashtag meme siege. If you believe Steam Siege is a good set, or at least at one time was, write hashtag Steam Siege not a bad set. The whole thing. I want the tag long, baby.
Yeah.
I want it trending on Twitter. 5,000 retweets, likes, subscribes, all that. Yeah. Anyways, Blips and Bleps. Do you want to explain what this is for anyone that's new?
All right, cue the music. Okay, so Blips and Bleps at the end of every episode here on Collectible Conversations. I, myself, and Squeaks like to throw out 3 completely random statements that we're not allowed to discuss or rebuttal each other. Rebut, is that the correct phrasing? Refute.
We can't argue about them.
Correct. So we just say them. We have to take it and wait until next week to either discuss actually the favorite that is chosen by the viewers here, or I mean, inevitably we just discuss them all. But choose your favorite in the comments below. And if you haven't figured out Blips and Bleps, I'm Radar, so I have Blips on a radar. And if you look at the logo right here, and if you go to Squeak's channel, you'll notice his all his cats, and
there might have been one I saw one in front of me. I don't know if they walked behind
he did walk in the back, and I'm looking forward to putting like an arrow or something to follow him along.
Yeah.
But obviously the cat Bleps. So that's where
so when a cat sticks its tongue out, if you don't know, when a cat, if you've never seen it, you should look it up. It's cute. Cat sits there with its little tongue hanging out. That's a blep. So we got his blips on a radar, my bleps. It's genius. Tell us it's genius. Hashtag genius in the chat. Anyway, what's your first blip?
My first blip, and I put together 5 here because my first 3 were all like predictions, and I don't want to just do all predictions. But my first one is going to be a Pokemon Center will open in the U.S. in 2023.
Okay, I'm not commenting. All I'm saying is I actually was just talking about this topic with my wife the other night.
Yeah.
Like crazy. Anyways, because I went to the original one. I just want to say. But so we're also not very good.
Sounds like a comment. That sounds like a comment to me.
I'm terrible at it. Oh man, it just guts me inside. Okay. So mine are actually kind of thematic to what we've kind of already talked about today, but yeah. I think collectively, if you take all aspects of the hobby, and if you want to hear what those are and more, pick this one. Sword and Shield is the best era of Pokemon we have ever had. Ever.
It's crazy. Ever. It's been 25 years. Ever. Okay.
Sword and Shield's right. 3 of them.
All right. I'm gonna throw this one out here.
This is like that one. Next.
This is probably a little a way to skate by here, but grades still don't matter. Just buy the card, sell the grade. That's just a generic one for all the market viewers.
Buy the card, not the grade. You changed it to buy the card, sell the grade.
That's right. We're making new sayings here. As I think we came up with Junk Slab era. We came up with a lot of stuff here.
The Junk Slab era was a Collectible Conversations original.
Yeah. So that's the new saying. Buy the cards, sell the grade. I'm sure that someone said it before, but I'm coining it here first.
Okay. So this is why I said my second one kind of goes with the first one. But I think because of how crazy 2020 and 2021 were. People will be too into the hobby that they will lose sight of how good the era actually was, and maybe never will develop an appreciation for like the overall picture of it.
Never. That's a strong word. Never.
Or at least for a long time.
No, you said never.
Never.
Right.
Oh. It's my bet.
All right, I'll say this one because I think it's a great talking point that I'm sure we'll get to. But with PSA's New Jersey opening, with their office in New Jersey opening here on the East Coast, I believe that grading will get down to $10, and with a 60-day turnaround time by the start of 2024. So another kind of like year prediction thing, but that grading, huge conversation that we need to have.
Okay. All right, so you want my last one?
Yes.
Woo! All right, this is my big one. I brought out the guns for this, all right? You guys ready? Okay.
He stood up.
Because this is serious. This has to get picked. I want to talk about this. The One Piece TCG is going to be the greatest, most successful card game that Bandai has ever produced and been a part of.
I have a lot of things to say here. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just gonna say I don't appreciate not getting a heads up a while ago about this, but yeah, we'll dive into it, and yeah, we'll talk about that soon. Because man, Naruto is flying off the shelves for me right now.
Do you have enough room? I can do this now.
Oh man! All right, well.
You can just edit that to the start of the podcast.
I think I will. I think I will.
I hope you know. And the viewer retention.
Well, that concludes our very first episode of the
favorite comments. Right after you put hashtag Seam Besiege is a good set or whatever I said before, also put that One Piece is the best.
Yeah, so be sure to pick your favorite blip or blep, and we'll hop on that right away in our next episode, and probably talk about everything else. But be sure. You
can say we may put it on our radar.
Well, I probably should have said this in the beginning as well, but we will be posting new episodes every Monday here on YouTube on the Collectible Conversation YouTube channel. I'm sure an Instagram will get started as well at some point. And potentially podcasts on Spotify, Apple, wherever I feel like putting it, or get requested to. So that's usually where I got requested to put it, was on Spotify. So I'm sure it'll get there soon. But yeah, expect a brand new episode every Monday. We'll probably play around with what times we release it, but yeah, cool. Squeaks, fantastic catching up with you and hopping back on the pod with you. So
too much energy now that I've like started being healthier, and like I honestly, dude, I don't know what to do with myself. Like,
it's life changing, dude. Go for a run. Go buy a putter. Go work on your golf game.
I'm just gonna go all 18 holes, just Naruto run the whole thing. All right. Well, anyways, cool. Thank you everyone for watching, and see y'all next Monday.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Collectible Conversations, episode 1, season 2. I've been waiting here for over a year. Squeaks has just not been here yet, just waiting for him. Oh, there he is. I don't know where I heard this the other day, but somebody talked about how like maybe we're living in the future and there's some drug that makes you we're some other entities, some other kind of beings, but there's a drug that you take that like, the getting high is being humanized. So you live this like human life while you're on this drug, and then you wake up and it's over and you're like, you have no idea what just happened. But maybe we're just on some weird drug that makes us live this life of being a human. That's a whole new theory that I heard the other day.
All right, Collectible Conversation.